Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
Hey, I'm Logan. I'm a Sergeant First Class in the Army, and I've been lucky enough to secure one of the charity slots provided by the Lifetime Foundation for next year's Leadville 100. In order to do this, I'm looking to raise around $2,800 over the course of the next year to donate to the Lifetime Foundation. A lot of their focus is on youth movement and nutrition and conservation, among other things. And it's a really great cause, and I appreciate any help that you guys could give. And a little bit goes a long way, and it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
In October 2019, Arlington, Texas was chosen to be the home of a new national museum, unlike any other. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a unique home of military history. The 100,000 square foot museums will house exhibits, archives, and artifacts relating to the 3,500 U.S. troops who have been awarded the medal, the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. The museum will have 31,000 square feet of galleries dedicated to U.S. troops who have received the award. The museum CEO, former Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, said the museum will focus on education as much as preservation. The building will have 5 areas dedicated to Medal of Honor winners from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. The main gallery will be located in a central plaza under a 25,000 square foot slab of steel, which will appear to be suspended in midair. It will be supported by 5 pillars. Black Rifle Coffee is a corporate sponsor of the museum, as are the Dallas Cowboys. The museum's board also includes over a dozen major corporations and 6 Medal of Honor recipients, including David Bellavia, Patrick Brady, and Britt Slabinski. Army Staff Sergeant Bellavia was awarded the medal for clearing an entire house by himself on November 10, 2004, as a squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. He killed 4 enemy fighters and wounded a 5th in close quarters battle. Army Major General Brady flew and coordinated the evacuation of 51 seriously wounded men during a firefight in Vietnam in January 1968. Slabinski, a Navy SEAL chief and team leader, led a rescue team of SEALs during Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan in March 2002. Slabinski and his team flew to a mountaintop ambush site to rescue Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, who had fallen from the back of a helicopter. Slabinski led the team through almost constant combat against an entrenched Taliban force. Along with the board members, former presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama serve as honorary directors. The museum is expected to open to the public in late 2024.
All right. Welcome back. MisFitNation. The MisFitNation show. We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the MisFitNation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the MisFitNation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the MisFitNation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the MisFitNation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to our Sunday after dinner show. This is the MisFitNation. We are live. We are in Tennessee. We are not in the affected part of Tennessee, not as affected as our brothers and sisters to the east of us. Our prayers, thoughts and prayers are with them right now as they battle through the 30 inches of rain that they received over the last 3 days. We got about 6 inches, and we are okay here. So our resources here that required help in December last year when we had the tornado are now flipping that script, and they're sending the help out east to Unicoi County, the greater Chattanooga area, greater Knoxville area, Gatlinburg, and of course into Asheville, North Carolina, where people are still cut off. So our thoughts and prayers are with them right now. Also, as we do every night here on the MisFitNation and the Tuesday Crew, we talk about those who we lost in the line of duty, our first responders. We have 2 tonight. One was called into us that we missed. He's a Constable Shane R. Iyer from Vienna Town Constable Office in New York. His end of watch was September 1st, 2024. The second one was Trooper Kevin Alexis Ramirez Vasquez from the Texas Department of Public Safety, Texas Highway Patrol, Texas. His end of watch was yesterday, September 28th, 2024. Keep their friends, their families, their peers, and all those who care about them in your thoughts and prayers. And again, we reach out to you and say, let's just try to do this peace thing. That's a little better. Let's rock this out and make sure we take care of each other and everyone comes home safe. So let's stop the nonsense and start doing the right things around here. Tonight, we have a great guest. Her and her husband serve as mentors for married couples at military bases in Colorado. She served as a military wife during her husband's 25-year career with the Air Force. She's experienced with transition and adjusting to change since she's moved 14 times as her husband served in the military. They lead small groups for military couples during his career, which taught them how to cultivate an authentic community. She earned her Master of Theological Studies from Gateway Seminary and is releasing a book for military wives called Another Move, God, 30 Encouragements for Embracing Your Life as a Military Wife in the next month, October of 2024. She and her husband have 2 kids in college. So without further ado, let's welcome Beth Runkle to the MisFitNation. Welcome, Beth.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me and trusting me with your audience. And I want to thank you so much for your faithful service to our nation, serving in uniform. It's greatly appreciated. Our freedoms are not free.
Thank you very much, Beth. And a lot of people don't understand how much the spouse goes through while we serve. And me and you just talked real quick offline of me being on the wrong link. I made a mistake tonight, but we talked about how you were in touch with some spouses that are right now going through this alone because their husbands have to be where the military tells them. And that's a hard thing for you guys to do. And we applaud our wives. My wife's downstairs right now. I had 30 years and she did the whole career with me in the Army, 22 years. So she went through a lot as well. And I understand that side, but I don't understand what you guys feel inside. So thank you for what you do.
Sure. And I just really feel for mainly our coastland spouses right now. We were stationed on the coast sometimes. And when a hurricane comes in, they leave with the equipment, the ship, the planes, the tanks, and they leave you to deal with the hurricane by yourself. And it can be really scary. Yeah, my thoughts and prayers are with them. That was the first thing I thought of when I saw this hurricane hitting was just all those military spouses that, their kids are afraid, they're afraid, and often they're not even able to be in contact with their spouse while it's going on and there's no electricity, no internet connectivity to stay in connection.
Exactly. So I appreciate that, Beth. And I gave just a 2-sentence introduction on you. I would love, and the MisFitNation would love, to learn more about Beth from as far back as you want to go to how we got here.
Sure. Well, I'll start from the beginning. So I met my husband at a wedding. I was a bridesmaid. He was a groomsman. It does happen, not just always in the movies. And we dated long distance our whole time. And he was already serving in the military, but he changed career fields while we were dating. And he had not felt it necessary to tell me anything about what to expect if you're going to marry someone in the military. And now I actually am thankful for that, because I probably wouldn't have married him, because I wouldn't want to give up so much control of my life. And he's a very good man, and I'm happily married. But our first year of marriage was really rough. We moved 3 times, and then we showed up at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, and we unpacked our boxes, and he deployed to the Middle East. And
Wow.
I just really found myself thinking, like, what in the world have I gotten myself into? Like, this is not what I thought marriage was going to be like. And he would actually deploy 4 times during the 2 years we were stationed there. I found myself hating the military and hating everything about it. And honestly, I complained. I complained all the time. The military kept us from going on vacation when we planned. It kept us from going home for the holidays, all the things. And I was really self-consumed, really wasn't embracing the community and trying to get involved. I was just worried about, me and my concerns. And so you can imagine marriage started to get tough for us, because respect is really important to men. And my husband loves his country, and he feels called to serve his nation. And that's something I came to realize. Is that I think I initially felt that, like, serving in the military, yeah, it's just a job, not a job. But it's not. It's so much more than a job. A calling is, I believe, what a man or a woman in serving in uniform do, is something that that person feels a special duty or obligation to perform. Often people will think of calling as, someone who's called to the clergy, but I believe it applies to our military as well. So I wasn't supporting, how patriotic he was and how he wanted to support his nation. I mean, he had a really cool job, and all I did was just talk bad about it. We would actually move again, and then by that point, we were struggling with infertility. So you can imagine my discontent just increased. And it was there that my husband ran into some people he had known in college, and they invited us to get involved in their Bible study. And in that Bible study, I really saw, it was the very first time I had ever studied the Bible for myself. I'd been raised in a church-going home, but I'd never been taught to study the Bible, and really didn't think much about God, throughout my day or even week. I believed in a higher power, but that was it. But I started the very first time studying the Bible was in the story of Sarah and Abraham. And right away, I saw that Sarah had a lot of similarities to me. Most people who I guess aren't normal, aren't military, might not see that, but I'm not a normal person. So, when God told Sarah and Abraham to move to a land that he would show them, they were moving long ways away. That's a PCS. That's a permanent change of station. And on top of that, Abraham went off to fight in combat with his 318 trained men when he went to rescue his nephew Lot. And I also saw that they were moving and resettling often. So, they were up in they traveled down to Canaan, they went to Bethel, they went down to Egypt, they came back to Bethel, they went to Oaks of the Marm. They actually went back to Egypt again. And so I saw that my life story and my challenges were addressed by God in his word. And it really just caused me to want to learn more about God, and just really feel like he saw me in my struggles. He cared about me, and he wanted a relationship with me. So that's kind of the beginning of the story.
And that's a good beginning. And I don't think I've ever heard someone say they met their husband at a wedding where they're both in the wedding. So that's amazing. I thought it was just in movies as well.
No, it really happens.
So you are that case. That's good. The case study and you're still together. So that's awesome.
Yes.
And you started not easily doing that long distance thing, where you really didn't get to feel what the military was doing that long distance thing until you really got close, and then he had to go and you had to stay when you moved out there. So that's even a harder learning curve for you as you move through the life as a military spouse.
Yeah, and I think that's what made it such a difficult adjustment. Is I had only seen him in his uniform one time before we
Wow.
got married. So And he really didn't talk about his work that much. But like I said, he changed career fields and got a lot more involved with equipment and combat and things like that. So it became a much more, he had a desk job in the beginning of his military career. But again, I'm thankful that I didn't know all that, because I think I would have been like, well, you're a really great guy, but this is a lot. Like, I don't know if I'm willing to do all this. And now military people are my absolute favorite people in the world, especially military spouses. And I'm so thankful for it. And I mean, I can say it was a hard life. It challenged me. But I think it made me such a better person because of the hardships and the challenges that I had to go through.
Definitely does. And it makes a lot of you, the spouses, stronger as they go through things alone, raising children, going through, say, a hurricane like what the whole East Coast went through here.
Yes.
In the past 4 days alone, going through maybe a snowstorm or whatever, or the kid breaks an arm, leg, car breaks down, and the other person, the other part of the family is not there to say, hey, I'm stepping up to do this. You have to step up and do it. There's a large quantity of things you have to learn on the fly that other couples or other families that are traditional families don't ever get that taste.
Yeah, I mean, you learn to do all kinds of things, right? You learn to deal with your house when it's flooding because there's a hurricane, or um, simple things like mow your yard, rake your leaves, edge, all those things that I didn't know how to do, and you got to figure out. You got to figure out how to handle your pets and eventually your kids and home maintenance. And military spouses are very independent, and sometimes I think so much so maybe to our detriment, because they're not willing to ask for help when they need it. And I think that's really essential. I think that self-care is something that sometimes gets neglected, but I think is super important, because we do live a much more stressful life, especially when our service member is deployed or on TDY. And I think we do have to say, hey, I need to do things that are going to be life-giving to me so that I can care for the people around me. And, recognize that caring for yourself, obviously not self-indulgently, but, doing the things that are going to be life-giving to you, help you be a better military spouse and, especially be a better mom when your spouse is gone. And I had to get over that initially, feeling guilty if I was going to do a small thing for myself.
Right. Yeah. So you start to feel that, oh, I did this and I should be doing it for others at this time. And that happens to a lot of spouses. And regretfully, a lot of marriages end because of that, because one spouse doesn't feel as wanted as the other. And when we come home from war or we come home from wherever, it's hard to adjust where I'm not in charge when I come home. And I realized that right away. I knew I was not in charge anymore. I wasn't the leader in the house. I just did what I was told, and I think that's what helped us out a lot. Just kind of standing back and listening to orders and doing what I have to do at home.
Well, I do think it's a dance. I think you have to learn how to let your spouse back in, because that's something we had to learn the hard way, right? I became so independent that when he came back home, he kind of felt like a visitor instead of, the leader of our home. I think you have to figure that out. And one of the things that we started doing is we recognize that marriage is hard, but I think military marriage might be harder because of all these challenges we have, all the moves, everything's outside of your control. And I mentioned our marriage had been tough. After we got involved in this Bible study, we actually expressed faith in Christ and, gave our lives to him because we recognized we needed to be saved. And about a year later, we went to a marriage conference. And it was a Christian marriage conference, and it dramatically transformed our marriage. We went from roommates living together to figuring, how to actually do marriage better together. And I think partly it's because my frame of reference for what marriage was going to look like prior to when I got married was really like all the romantic comedies I had watched. And don't get me wrong, I really like a good romantic comedy. They're enjoyable to watch, but it's not really good marriage advice. Because, a romantic comedy tells you you should be happy and it's all about you and I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. And that's not what marriage is really like. And I really don't think it's what military marriage is like. So we learned God's biblical blueprint for marriage. I learned, that marriage is really a covenant. And we respond to our spouse not how really they've earned or deserve, or not because of what they've done for us, but it's just a response to, how God loves us and what he's done for us. But at this marriage conference, we both just learned so much. I learned how my behavior had been so disrespectful to my husband, and, my lack of support for the military, had just really communicated to him that I didn't respect him. And, if a man doesn't feel respected at home, he might want to stay at work more because they feel respected more in the uniform. But when we learned these concepts, we said, this is really great stuff. Like, we want to teach these to other couples. And they told us from the platform at the end of the conference that there were some small group guides that we could take with us to share with others. And so we did. We took that $8 guide back to our base in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi, and we began leading small group studies with other military couples. And so we were investing in other people's marriages, but while we were doing that, we were also making deposits in our own marriage, reminding ourselves that marriage isn't all about being selfish and getting what you want, and that it's not 50-50. It's really, can we outgive one another? It's 100-100. And that really became part of me stepping into the calling that I believe that God had on my life. I don't wear the uniform. I didn't wear the uniform. But I believe that because God had caused me to marry this military man, again, not knowing what I was getting into, that God really had something for me to do as well. And so we moved those 14 times, and that's just what we would do. We would show up and we would start leading people in small group marriage studies. Some of our studies were only 4 weeks long, and we just found we did it when we were living in the family high-rise apartments in Korea. We would just ask neighbors. We lived on base a lot. Just, hey, do you want to do a 4-week marriage study to help your marriage? And people were so hungry for it, to help them work on their marriage, to not be another divorce statistic. And that's really where I found that I had purpose in this military community. But also, it was such a blessing because the first few moves we did, I would go maybe 6 months to a year, really kind of feeling lonely, not feeling like I fit in, didn't have my place, didn't have my people. And because we were starting these small groups, I was immediately creating community. It's what I like to call cultivating community. I was just making it by inviting people into our home. And I think at the beginning, I thought, wow, my home needs to be perfect to invite people over. And I was kind of having a bad attitude about having to make my house look all Pinterest worthy. And then I realized that, scripture said we are to show hospitality without grumbling. And I was like, ooh, I got to figure this out. And so what I did is I adjusted my view of what my home needed to look like. I believe I have the gift of hospitality because I like to welcome people into my home, but it doesn't look like it's Pinterest worthy. It's just kind of like, hey, come over. There might be some toys on the floor. Everything's not going to be spick and span clean. I'll probably serve you coffee or lemonade, and that's pretty much it. But I believe that when we open our homes, we're really opening a pathway to opening our heart.
Definitely. And I like that you mentioned Korea. So I think that was my favorite move with my family when we got to all go to Korea.
Did you go to Yongsan?
Yes, we were in Hanamdong.
Okay.
Yeah, so we stayed in Hanam in 2008, 2010. For the first 4 months, I was up in Uijeonbu until they moved me down to the brigade unit. So it was awesome to have them there, and that was my third trip to Korea, and this is the first time I actually seen Korea. So I actually got to be a tour guide and a tourist at the same time on my third trip with my wife and daughter.
Okay.
Got to coach my daughter in soccer over there, and she was able to win the Peninsula Cup in soccer. It was a great experience for all of us. And those two didn't want to come home. They didn't want to come back to the States. They wanted to stay in Korea.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, the community is super close knit, right? We were there for 2 years. So we did a remote with my husband. So it was a accompanied remote. We were at Osan, but we would go to Yongsan to get like nice live-in life, real stores. Yeah, it was fancy at Yongsan compared to Osan.
You had Chili's though, so.
We did have Chili's, and that's the only place we ate for 2 years. And then when we
Oh
came
wow.
back to the United States, we're driving on the interstate in San Antonio. My kids go, Chili's, Chili's. Can we go to Chili's? I'm like, no, we cannot go to Chili's for at least 6 months. Like we're taking a break from Chili's.
My wife actually went back in, I want to say 2017 or 16, 17, in that time period. She went back to visit one of her friends that she met while we were in Korea. She worked in one of the child development centers as a
Oh, great. Yeah.
assistant director, and one of her coworkers was still there, so she went over to hang out with her for a little while. So she stayed at Osan actually.
Oh, great.
So I mean, you build those relationships. You were just talking about how the relationship close knit. Korea is a great study in how to live in a fishbowl, because
Yes.
you know everybody, because everyone is right there, and there's only so many of us that are there, and then you have all the local nationals there, so you look different from them and you act different from them, so you know who's who in the zoo,
Oh,
basically.
yes.
It's hard not to tell, and gossip is insane, but once you get your feet settled and you have a good connection with others, I think Korea works out for a lot of people.
We really enjoyed it. I mean, my kids were small. We lived in a high-rise tower, so I joke it was kind of like living in a dorm, but with families. And honestly, our apartment wasn't much bigger than a dorm room. We had 800 square feet, but there's a little playground area right at the bottom of the building, and there's not a whole lot to do there. So all the moms and the kids are there every afternoon. Great playmates. But it does rain a lot in the summer, and it's pretty humid. But we really enjoyed our time there. Have so many great memories, and traveled in Korea, and also went to China. We went on a trip there, and then we did a week vacation in Guam, which is, it's an American territory. It's not very Americanized at all. But if you've been living in Korea, Guam is very Americanized. It's all relative. I was so excited when we got on island because there was a Kmart. I was just like, wow, this is exciting living.
Special. Yeah. Get the lights going, blinking for you when you walked in. Welcome.
Yeah, well, it was just American stuff, because we had like our BXPX was basically the size of a 7-Eleven, and that was it. And Korean people are different sized, and like they didn't have shoe polish. My kids were potty training, so it just seemed like there was never enough underwear for sale at the BX.
Of course.
So we got to stock up on that at the Kmart in Guam.
Come back with an extra suitcase. Yeah.
Yes.
So along those lines of how we were just talking about living in Korea and the things you miss and the things you want to have, how do America, I mean, wives or spouses in general, go from just surviving to thriving as a spouse?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you have to consider, but I think the first one is attitude. Because, I mean, we did my husband seemed to get a lot of assignments were in not a really great place. Places that nobody else wants to go. You know how you do I don't know what they call it in the Army, but in the Air Force, when you get your assignment, you put up a dream sheet, where you want to go. And we often got where we didn't want to go. Like it wasn't even in our list. But thankfully, I had come to believe in God and a higher power. And so when you get that assignment that you didn't want, in fact, it was the bottom. In fact, you dreaded it. You just go, okay, I guess God's got a reason for us to go there. I like to say that God outranks even the generals and the admirals. So you just make the best of it. But I can honestly say I learned that you can have the greatest time in the worst assignment, or you can have the worst time in the best assignment. And it's really just your attitude and, how you're going to embrace the people. Our last assignment was at Laughlin Air Force Base, which is in Del Rio, Texas. It's 3 hours from civilization on the Mexican border. When you look at it from the Google Earth, it's brown. That's all there is, because it's a dirt. There's no green. But honestly, we loved it. The community was amazing. It's kind of like overseas where there's not a whole lot to do, so everybody does a lot together. And most of those little assignments where nobody wanted to go, you cry going, but you cry harder leaving. So I think attitude is huge. Also, realizing that, God is in control. That's huge. To just embrace every assignment, because there's going to be things, inevitably, lots of things that are going to happen in the military career that are outside of your control that you didn't want. It may be that TDY, that deployment, that assignment, the job, your boss. I mean, it's just life. There's things that are not great. But to just be able to say, okay, this is not what we wanted, but it's what God wanted, and it makes us a better person, I think is absolutely key. I would say out loud a lot to myself, well, God's got a place, he's got something for us to do here. And sure, there's disappointments. I'm not going to discount that and say that, there weren't times I wasn't disappointed or my husband wasn't disappointed. But you try to just say, okay, but this is what God has for us. And then I think learning how to quickly create community, and that really involves being vulnerable. And this is not particularly an easy thing to do in today's day and age. I think even more so with like social media, right? We have to look good on camera, and we're going to post the happy things. But that is how I learned to create authentic community and to make friends quickly. So what I would do is I learned, again, I didn't want to go through this lonely time, is I would, meet somebody and just kind of be like, hey, I'm struggling with this, just put it out there that I'm not perfect and I don't have it all together and I don't have a model marriage and I don't always have a great attitude. Right. And then that would allow the other person to begin opening up. And so what I like to say is we would just dive deep quickly, because the thing is in the military community is, I know, Rich, our community is constantly changing. Either we're moving or they are, or people are moving in. So it's just in constant flux. And so if you wait until you feel comfortable to form friends, you're not going to ever get there, because it's just always changing. But I mean, I look back on my social media feed and its majority is all our military friends. I made the most amazing friendships with so many people. So one of my very best friends, we still text every week. She comes and visits a lot. We only overlapped for 9 months.
Wow.
But they were a good 9 months because we said it was the end of her husband's military career and fairly early in my husband's, but she had learned this: go vulnerable, go deep, be real. And she's a really true friend, but I've just got so many friends. And I was able to form these quick friendships because I did, be vulnerable and put it on the line and not pretend like I had it all together. Like we have a perfect marriage or I had perfect kids, because I'm not. And I think that's just how we go deep quickly. And it is a risk. I recognize that. But it is a risk that never burned me. And I would pray about who I was going to be open to. But it never burned me. And honestly, when my husband said he was ready to retire, I was like, wait, you mean we're going to leave the military? I was like, no. These are our people. These are what we do. I mean, this is what I literally said. And he was like, it's been 25 years. But I just love the people, and so many people I would have never been friends with, right? Who are different, but we're held by that common love of country, and just wanting to make a difference in this world. And I'm honestly very thankful that I had to do all the moves and the deployments and the TDYs because of all those awesome people I got to interact with. And we still do that now. That marriage ministry that we began, that's still what we do now. We still serve the military community in full-time ministry. We also do ministry with cadets at the Air Force Academy. So we just still, we can't get away from the military people.
It's kind of like a magnet, like you said. Once you're in, you're in. And we, in my office alone, we're all retired, and So we get to train soldiers on a daily basis, but we still have that locker room mentality of active duty dudes who
Yeah.
still run their mouths all day and talk trash, but we get the job done. And our wives are still our cheerleaders basically from beyond, but they have careers too now where they are actually able to breathe and have that career. Did you find it harder as you transitioned out to say, "Oh, our wings are spreading now," to have this new mission to maybe help other families as they go through their transitions of life, being from single to married and to thrive in the military?
I mean, that's what we're doing now. Yeah, helping them. So we're still doing all of our work. So it's ministry with the military. It's changed a little bit because we don't just do marriage ministry anymore, right? We do cadets at the Air Force Academy. So helping them launch, they're trying to figure out what career field are they going to go into and how are they going to be able to control where they're going to live, and is their girlfriend going to be stationed with them, because they're both wearing the uniform. So there's all these unique things that we didn't have to deal with, because a lot of the couples that we deal with, we do like a lot of pre-marriage counseling now. So they're dual mil, because they're both graduating from the Air Force Academy. But I'm still doing a lot of ministry with younger military spouses. I just feel kind of like, I survived it. We made it and our marriage made it. Praise God, and so we just want to give back to this community that meant so much to us. And just to continue to invest in them and, hopefully help them to avoid some of the mistakes that we made along the way. And, another thing that helped me go from just surviving to thriving, you reminded me of when you spoke about the cheerleading. I think that's really important too, because when you're serving in the military, you often do have a dangerous job. It's super important, right? You're not just pushing paper. I mean, you're holding weapons. People's lives are at stake. Your soldier or your airman, their life depends upon you. So that's another thing that I learned, initially I was complaining about the military, negative about it. And then just to support it. But to come alongside my husband and cheerlead him, he needed that. He needed me to believe in him sometimes when he was doubting himself, because it's an incredibly dangerous job and the pressure and the stress is high. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't have things that I did. In fact, I'm in this empty nest season of life, and, I've gone back and gotten my master's degree. Sure, there were some years that I did put some of my dreams on hold, but I'm the other side of my husband's military career, and it's not forever. It's temporary, and it is a sacrifice for your spouse and for your nation, but it's not forever. And I really felt like God used my experience of being a military spouse, investing in the community around me, to make me more equipped for what I do now in ministry. And then make me value, the master's degree that I did get so much more. So I don't feel like I was put on a shelf to collect dust for a few years. I feel like it was still part of what God was doing in and through my life. And honestly, I'm just such a better person. I was so selfish in the beginning. And now I'm looking around me always. How can I invest in others? How can I make a difference in others? Because it's not just about us. We got a whole big world with 3 billion people in it, and
Yes,
people that need others and need people to invest in them.
definitely. And me and my wife will be going out your way here in a couple weeks because she went to Kansas State, got her bachelor's and master's while we are at Fort Riley. So
Yeah.
she was able to do that while working and raising our daughter, because I wasn't home hardly ever. So she did all that on her own while we're out there, and we're going to go out and see them play Colorado on October 12th. So we'll
Oh,
be out,
great.
and we're going to be staying out. We're staying in the spring. So
Oh, fantastic. It's amazing here. We never got to be stationed here. We just moved here to work with the ministry, and wow, I love the mountains though. And I can't believe there's a place exists without humidity and bugs. Like, there were a lot of bugs the different places we were stationed. There's not bugs here.
I'm sure Mississippi was great for that.
Oh, there was a lot of bugs. And we did Alabama, and we did Florida, and we did Virginia. Yeah, lots of bugs. We basically did the bug, highway.
And then Korea, you had
Yeah,
humidity,
Korea had a lot of bugs too, and it had a lot of moisture.
a lot of humidity. So you
Yeah.
were like attracted to it. Now you're like out of it. So you might go through some withdrawal now.
No, I don't miss it. In fact, when I go back to visit my family in Florida, you step out of the airport, the double doors open. I just feel like I have been cloaked in this heavy spit. I mean, it's just so humid.
Definitely. Yeah, we did a lot of time in the South, and I think Fort Riley was probably the only place where it wasn't as humid. So it was cold. It was extremely cold in the winter, but we didn't have that humidity like we
Yeah,
have.
and I think it's probably colder there than it is here because we get so much sunshine and we're higher in altitude. We get over 300 days of sunshine here. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, and even when it does snow, the sun comes out and melts it. By the next day, you can drive everywhere. It's melted
Nice.
off your cars. It's melted off your driveway. So it's really the best of both worlds. We're very happy. But I guess you didn't get stationed here at Carson.
No, I did. I've done TDY there a few times, and I've been to Pueblo to the chemical depot out there.
Okay.
So we did a couple trips to Pueblo and I think 3 trips to Carson now. Yeah, 3 trips to Carson itself.
Yeah, it's a pretty big base.
Yeah, that was the first.
We go down there and do some marriage and parenting ministry.
That's the first place my luggage got lost on the airlines. So
That's never fun.
that was my first memory of Fort Carson. It got there 2 days later, so I wore the same clothes for 2 days. It was awesome. And you don't get those frequent flyer miles either. So
No.
that your bags get.
Yes.
So now you're out there, you're at the academy. It's a beautiful academy out there. They have a beautiful the chapel there is pretty awesome. The way it's set up.
Well, it's under a white box right now. They're
It's
refurbishing it. It's been like 5 years. It's completely covered with a huge white box. You can't see it. It's kind of sad.
all scaffold. Man.
It's more than scaffolding because of the winds and the precipitation. They put it in it looks like a very, very big white gift box.
Oh man. Wow, that's horrible because that's a beautiful
Yeah,
chapel.
I know some of the cadets that are here won't see it their whole 4 years.
Oh, wow. And that's like
But they're refurbishing it, but it's I think they have to do it like, it's stained glass. They have to do it piece by piece, and there was asbestos, of course.
Yes.
So it's just a big project.
I'm sure they're doing a lot of blasting to the outer walls as well to make sure they're clean and such as they refurbish it. So I'm sure it'll come out beautiful, and the next 2 classes might be able to see it.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So where do you see you guys in the next few years as you build your ministry and maybe grow your network and have more cadets and more military members that you train and or I guess mentor as you move forward?
Well, first of all, we work with a ministry. So the ministry that we work with is actually a global ministry. It focuses on the military. So we're in 32 countries around the world. And then we are at somewhere between 50 and 60 bases stateside. And what we do is we just go partner with the chaplains to minister to the airmen, soldiers, midshipmen, Marines and their families. And we are part of a ministry that is part of Campus Crusade for Christ. So we're called Cru Military. So my husband and I just work here in the Springs, but my husband does also oversee the West region. So he's helping new locations grow. That keeps him really busy, helping new locations, train up people, recruit people. I just continue to serve here. I did just finish a book that's coming out. And I'm very excited about that, just to really give these lessons on how do we not just survive, but thrive. And, key principles about how to get rid of our fearful thoughts as a military spouse and replace those with faith. So the book goes through Sarah and Abraham's life. And so I wrote the book not because I always dreamed of being a writer. I just wanted to minister to more military spouses, and this was a way for me to reach more of them, and then also use my master's degree. So I am hoping to do more speaking to military bases because, again, military spouses are just my favorite people in the world, and just want to equip them. I did do some speaker certification a year ago so that, I'm a good public speaker and well-equipped. But we will still just continue to serve here. Marriage is our sweet spot, but I do really enjoy discipling women serving in uniform through the Air Force Academy. So I will walk with them usually for 3 of their 4 years. We meet weekly. I help them grow in their walk with the Lord, their understanding of the Bible, but also it's women. And so we talk a lot about relationships and struggles with their roommates and things like that. I really feel like what I do in discipleship is just doing life with people, coming right alongside them. And that also involves a lot of that vulnerability I've talked about, not pretending that I'm perfect and have it all together. I'm a broken person just like they are.
I think that once everyone realizes that no one's perfect, and you can't be perfect. There's no way you can be perfectly sure a robot, I guess. That's the only way you could do that. Once you realize that, things get a lot easier. You just start going through the life, and like you said earlier about the Pinterest house. If I walk into a house and it's like that, I feel like I shouldn't touch anything. I have to take my shoes off tiptoe and don't sit on the couch because it probably has plastic on it, like my grandmother used to have.
Mm-hmm.
Your butt sticks to it because it's hot, and you don't want to do that. So you just want to stand there like a robot, like a statue. So that doesn't exist. No one is perfect. Live your life and be free and be happy. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I also want to mention another part of our ministry that I didn't talk about just because I know your audience is veterans. So we also partner with another ministry called Reboot, Combat Trauma Healing Ministry. And we will offer their courses. We love their curriculum because they took the guides that are actually our ministry's resources and they put them in video content. My husband and I have led a course for that. It was honestly the most powerful thing I've ever been a part of, to see healing brought to soldiers, airmen, Navy, and really their spouses, because most people with PTSD, their spouse is going to exhibit similar symptoms that we call secondary PTSD. So that's a great resource. Cru Military does offer those Reboot classes. But in addition to that, you can go to the Reboot Military website, and there are classes offered all over the nation to help you get healing from the spiritual wounds we believe that you have as a result of combat trauma and other invisible wounds of war.
Definitely. And there is one here at Fort Campbell.
Great.
They used to do it in the Wounded Warrior Barracks, Wounded Warrior compound.
Yes.
I'm not sure where they moved it to now because that has changed into a different unit now. It's called something different now. But I'm sure it's still in the same area. But they do have it here. And I know a lot of my brothers and sisters here have gone through it. And they all had their praises for it.
Good. Yeah. I mean, the transformation that we've seen with the couples, that we had 20 in our class, and so many of them had done a lot of different things at the VA and different counseling and counselors and medication. And they just really received freedom through this course. And it's not just one course. It's actually a series of courses now to go further in that healing for you and your spouse. And it was really amazing too, to see most of the spouses, and my particular class that we hosted, for some reason, the only service members were men. It's not always that way, though. In fact, we have a woman who lives in Texas, and she and her husband both have PTSD from serving in the Army, and they lead the class together. But in our particular class, most of the spouses were women, and they found that there really was no one that they could talk to about what they were dealing with, being married to someone with PTSD. So it was amazing for those spouses as well, to have people they could talk to, and then to get some healing themselves because they had effects of trauma as well.
And we just spoke a little bit about your book.
Yes.
It's coming out anywhere in October. What day in October does it come out, and where can the audience go pick it up?
Sure. It's released October 22nd. It's on Amazon. It's on Lifeway. It's Walmart.com, not the stores. But yes, and I also have a free leader's guide because I think that we learn better in small groups. And that's what I did a lot as a military spouse. So I have a free leader's guide. If you go to my website, it's a 6-week leader's guide that they can download to use with the book. And that is BethRunkle.com. So my last name is spelled Runkle. So BethRunkle.com. You just click on the resources. It'll be the top one there, the Leader's Guide. And I also put out weekly content on Instagram. I call it Mill Wife Advice. I bring a guest on there with me, and we will talk about a topic. We talk about reintegration after deployment, military marriage, how to make friends, how to choose faith over fear, how to deal with waiting. How do you help your kids who are military adjust? All those things. So I do that on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Beth Runkle Writes, and there it's Beth Runkle Writes.
Runkle
Writes. So WRITES.
It's in the chat. The website's in the chat, and the website is going across the bottom of the screen right now. If you're on video, if you're on the audio, will be in the notes as where to contact, where to learn more about Beth. In the show notes is in there already. Beth, it's been great chatting with you this evening. It's awesome to hear the perspective of the spouse without my spouse telling me these things. Although I do value her opinion on a lot of things.
Sure you do.
Yes, I do, definitely. If you could, at the end of every one of our shows, we have our guest, tell the audience 3 things they can do to better themselves or others in the next day, or to make it easier on themselves the next couple of days. What would that be?
Sure. Number 1 would be to embrace your calling as either a military member or military spouse or whatever you're doing. That God has purpose for you right where you are for that, even that short or long season that you are. Number 2 would be attitude is everything. I talked about how it can really make or break. And that matters no matter what you're doing, right? And then number 3, you just have to trust that God is in control. All these things happen that we think we don't want to happen. But God is always at work for our ultimate good and for his glory. So sometimes what we think is going to be good for us isn't really what's going to be good for us, right? I had a lot of hardship I went through with all my husband's deployments, all these moves. But I feel like I had a lot of rough places on me that God had to smooth off me through that hardship. And he used that because he just really wanted me to be in relationship with him. And so he had to give me, I felt like he gave me things that were constantly changing in my life of this physical world so that I would cling to him because he was the only thing that wasn't going to change.
Outstanding. That's great advice, Beth. And Misfit Nation, please heed that advice, and along with all the other advice you've been given over the last 448 shows now. So thank you for being part of us, and thank you for paying attention to Beth tonight. And please go to BethRunkle.com, check out her resources, and of course get her book in the next 3 weeks on October 22nd. Beth, thank you for hanging out tonight from the Springs, and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great things.
Thank you, Rich, and thanks for your show that you're doing to serve our veterans. Really appreciate that.
No problem. Have a good night.
You too.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.